partner because World Vision has been in business for 75 years helping people. Got started by a guy named Bob Pierce. He was inspired by a guy named Hudson Taylor. When he was in Sunday school, his Sunday school teacher, when he was 16, gave him a biography of Hudson Taylor and said, hope this inspires you. And it did. If you're going, who's Hudson Taylor? I can tell you're a Lutheran. In other circles, Hudson Taylor is like, whoa, Hudson Taylor. Hudson Taylor was British missionary to inland China. Here's some of the things that Hudson Taylor brought that have changed missions forever. It used to be kind of like when the Missouri Synod started doing missions. We said, we will go to Native Americans in the wilds of Michigan, and we will teach them German so that they can properly understand theology, and then we will tell them about Jesus. And that was kind of how world missions worked. Hudson Taylor went to China. He was obviously a polyglot and picked up the language and said, oh, I'm going to talk about Jesus in Mandarin. And then he said, you know what? I think my Western clothes are getting in the way and my Western haircut. So he started dressing in indigenous clothing and shaved his head and kept the ponytail thing, which was the style back then in China. And obviously everybody from the great British mission societies were horrified that he went native. On the other hand, it worked. And then he said, you know what, we're kind of only working in these few trade cities that we have, and British East India Company and Jesus kind of get confused for folks. I think we should move to inland China missions, where no one has heard before, and that way we can do pure Jesus and not Jesus plus gunboat diplomacy. And so he started working with folks, training local folks, and moving upstream into China. Interesting enough, with the guy, he had real frail health, went through at least 2 wives by death, not by divorce, and was back and forth and trying to do things. He also really worked big on faith-based missions, which was, if you believe God is calling you, step out in faith and the resources will follow. And so you had, Edwin, Linda, you had somebody in YWAM, right?
Oh, yes.
Long time ago? Yeah, and YWAM is a faith-based mission. That's like I'm going, and, people will provide. Don't get me wrong, you can ask ahead of time, but it's like, I believe this is the call and the resources will follow, which is sort of how congregations work these days. If you just kind of go, well, we can't do anything until we have all the money, you're never going to do anything. So sometimes you have to go, I think this is working, the trend is there, and we can ask God's people, and pretty soon we'll find out if we have the resources to do this thing or not. By the way, let me give you an example here at Christ our Savior. We have been talking about the need to expand the parking lot, okay? Because that's our next big project. I mentioned that to a few people. We have received our first gift of $27,000. Somebody said, we need that parking lot. And I went, okay. Now, I don't think that's anywhere close to enough, and next year we will announce the whole fundraiser and all the stuff we're going to do to make it happen. But I was like, and the bake sale women are already going, oh, we can get behind that. Here's a quote from Bob Pierce. Every single person, regardless of where they were born, what they look like, is made in the image of God. Oops, sorry, I should have capitalized God there. And deeply loved by the Almighty. And he believed in miracles, like I said. And I love his definition of miracles. Nothing is impossible until it reaches the place where the very utmost of human effort is not enough. And God moves in to fulfill the space between what is possible and what he wants done that is impossible. That was his definition of what miracle looked like. I went, pretty good definition of miracle. Here's some highlights. It started, Bob was in Asia and kind of interested in China and all that, and the Korean War happened. He was in Korea, and when Seoul got overrun by North Koreans, bunch of orphans got left behind. And surprise, surprise, Christian churches stepped in and started taking care of widows and orphans because we're Christians. That's what we do. And he was hanging out with these local pastors and said, I know a bunch of wealthy folks back in America who could probably help with this. And that's where the idea of sponsorship of a child. And have you ever sponsored a child through like World Vision or something? Okay, me and Kathy. Judy and I have had various children over the years. It started before we were even married, so like 45 years ago. You know, somebody came to the church we were attending when we were dating and told us about World Vision, and we went, oh yeah, we can get behind that. So Judy and I have been with World Vision for like 45 years through their sponsorship. It's not really adopting because it's not our kid. Stays with his family. We get reports, but we send, I think it started off as $18 a month. I don't know what it is now because Judy handles that kind of stuff. When Ken Armstrong, the guy who does the work in Cambodia that we partnered with, when he was in Cambodia, he was trying to figure out how to fund the orphanage and everything else. And World Vision people were there. And World Vision said, oh, here's what you got to do. You got to set up a sponsorship program. And some of you sponsored orphans at the orphanage in Krung Lavia as a result. This is how that, and it creates a monthly income as opposed to one big gift, and then it's kind of like, well, what happens? So that's where that whole concept was born in 1950. So it's 75 years old, they're claiming this year, good enough anniversary. In the 1970s, Vietnam War ends. All those boat people, if you remember them, I think this congregation brought in a whole bunch of folks. World Vision were some of the first people because nobody wanted them, right? They would just kind of like kept pushing the boats away from shore. Thailand didn't want them, Cambodia didn't want them. And World Vision went out and they had Operation Sea Sweep and just started picking people up, going, we'll find a place for them. We trust in God. And they did that. They responded in the Rwanda genocide with forgiveness training. Christy Yoder, who is a genocide researcher, has given me some resources that were partly inspired through World Vision. And World Vision has done all sorts of interesting things. When Judy and I were landed in Phnom Penh in Cambodia, there's a great big like display as you're getting ready to go through customs. And it's all, and because Cambodia was a dirt poor country, so it was ripe for sexual tourism, which is when wealthy folks come and exploit children. And World Vision paid for the video saying, by the way, if you exploit a child in Cambodia, you're going to do time in a Cambodian jail. So just a heads up, guys. And then at the end, it goes, sponsored by World Vision. You're going, well, that's an interesting use of Christian resources, but beneficial, Oh, let's protect some kids. So they've always been kind of like, yeah, let's try stuff. In fact, they were some of the first to, when AIDS was ripping through Africa, that they said, oh, we got to respond. And there was a lot of pushback from churches in North America, because if you remember, those were the Reagan years. And there was a lot of Christians who were like, these people deserved it. And we are not going to act. We're not going to help because, and World Vision said, nope, these are people created in the image of God. And whatever they did, and for many of them, this was, their husband brought home the problem and mom is dying. And they were like, we do not condemn, we help. And so we've had, there have been times where they've kind of been leading edge stuff. Here's their goal. They call it their biblically empowered worldview is to help individuals and families change their mindsets and helps them, like we're going to do with the animals, to lift themselves out of extreme poverty. These are not people who are going to get middle-class American wealthy. These are folks who are going to have steady food and a place to live. And their goal is by 2030, they have 300 million people, more than 70 countries. They're really active in certain parts of Asia, in Africa, and some parts of Latin America. I think our sponsored child is in Peru right now because they age out of the program from time to time. and World Vision says, hey, your kid aged out. They're now got this trade because they went to trade school on your dime, and here's your next kid. Um, they've done some other cool stuff over the years where they let the people that are, like, they get to look at us, the sponsors, and say, instead of us going, well, yeah, we'll pick that kid, they let the people go, we'll pick those people to sponsor. So
Would you ever get to meet them?
I think if I really pushed hard and went to Peru, I probably could. I do know of one woman that my mom told me the story of somebody from her congregation who was like in there from the get-go. Um, and she actually went and met her sponsored child. Um, I also, well, I don't know, where I lived in Wisconsin, I had a bunch of families with Korean kids. They had like 4 Anglo kids and then a Korean kid because they adopted a Korean war orphan.
Big around here
Yeah,
for a while.
yeah, and like in the same way, we were. So one of the things, if this is their gift catalog, this is where we're shopping um, for the animals in the stable. Not every animal we're doing is currently in the catalog, like honeybees. I'm not lying to you; they still do it. You'll see it in a minute, but they're not this year listed in the catalog. Um, One of the things I love about them is, if were any of you on a short-term mission trip with our congregation, we make you read, this is the local one, we make you read a book before you go called When Helping Hurts. And it's written by a guy named Brian Fickert, and he's from Sheboygan, Wisconsin, went to Sheboygan Lutheran High School with my friend Rick Ebers, who's the pastor at the Journey. But what Brian said was, so many times Westerners come and they say, here I've come to save the day. And they actually hurt the process. So like they come and build something, okay? And as a result, they create unemployment for guys who are actually builders, okay? And they said, we got to rethink how we do some of this. World Vision has been leading edge stuff on this. So when we went to the village of Chaval in Guatemala, we had some members of that mission team who were like, let's hit the boots, get boots on the ground, and let's start building stuff. Let's start doing stuff, because that's how I share Jesus, is by helping. And we had to say, here, read this the first 100 pages of it are a real downer, because you're going, oh God, I've done that. Oh yeah, oh man, have we done that? But then Brian goes on to say, here's ways you can actually help. So when our mission team went, the first thing they did was meet all the people and talk to what was called the Kokoti, which was the local leadership of that village. And they spent the first 4 years in dialogue and just saying, how could we help out around here? What's going on? And, and they, don't get me wrong, they did Sunday school stuff. They did VBS stuff. They sang songs. They met everybody. They played soccer with the kids. They did all that stuff. And finally, what the Kokoti said, they said, we would like your help in building a community center, because we have the government school, but when the teacher leaves, they lock it up. And there's no place big enough for the whole village to get together. And if we could have a place where the village could get together, when the school is overflowing, there'd be a place for kids to go to that would be out of the rain. And so our short-term mission team, when they finally started to build, didn't come in and say, we're here now, you all can go home. They actually worked with the people from the village. We underwrote the cost of things, but then built alongside of them. I didn't go, Scott did. And Scott's a builder, great plan. He also can play soccer. And then the community center got built by the people in the community. Because if we parachute in, build something, and then leave, everybody in the village goes, who's responsible for that? And then it falls into disrepair. And it can be as simple as you go in and you put in a water well, and like it needs like a 50-cent part. But who's responsible for the 50-cent part? Because nobody owns the well. And the community doesn't have any ownership in it. And so the well doesn't get fixed. The hand pumpy thing, and it's like, World Vision said, no, 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 we don't come in and do that. We ask people, and you get to buy a share in the well. Now, don't get me wrong, it's ridiculously cheap. It doesn't underwrite the cost, but everybody has a stake in it. So when something breaks, everybody says, that's my well. Okay. Yes, sir. What? Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Oh.
Sure. I mean, yeah, and that's so that these are the lessons we've learned. The reason I'm holding up the When Helping Hurts in Church Benevolence is because all my other copies of When Helping Hurts are gone. I buy it in bulk and give them away because this is an essential read for people who are going on short-term mission trips. I have made enemies of many short-term mission organizations because they're like, no, no, we have a model. We go and we build a house. We have a model. We go and do this. And then people are coming in going, but doesn't that hurt in the end? And they're like, this is what we do. Yes, ma'am.
So, something that I learned when I was working with a nonprofit.
Yeah.
When they build these things, they don't teach them how to take care of it.
Right. So like Ed can tell you and Edwin can tell you in Habitat, one of the things that's part of your 500 hours if you're going to be a Habitat homeowner is how to take care of your Habitat house, right? And they're like, because a lot of these folks have been renters their whole life, right? And what do you do when you've been a renter your whole life? And somebody from Habitat says, here's where your water main is. If there's a leak, you turn this off. Here's what you do for this. Here's what you do for that. Yeah, so it's exactly right. Because if you just give somebody something, I could tell you a bunch more stories, but I want you to see something from World Vision. You're going to meet a woman named Damaris, and you're going to have to watch the closed captioning because, like I said, I got the music just fine, but somehow I missed the voices. So, but it is.
By the way, her farm is an acre and a half.